Thanks to Cutting Room. BackStory events were a series of live-streamed interviews. If you like what you see, you can find out what we've got coming up next at BackStoryEvents.com. So please check it out. We are streaming live today on Guitar World's Facebook and YouTube pages, so you can go back and watch it again. You don't have to record it. I can guarantee you, our thing will look better than your phone. So relax, enjoy yourself, and please join me in welcoming Jake Shimabukuro. All right, so first off, let me say welcome.
Thank you.
I know you've had a busy day today.
No, I've been looking forward to this. This is my first time to the Cutting Room. This is the coolest room, man, to play in, so very excited.
So you have a new album out. Can you please share a little bit about what the album's about, a little background on the project?
Yeah, well, the album is called The Greatest Day, and, thank you. Hey, thank you. We're checking if there was an applause sign back here or something. But yeah, it's called The Greatest Day, and it's a follow-up to a previous record that I did called Nashville Sessions. And Nashville Sessions was a very experimental, it was my first all-original record, and there was a lot of electric ukulele and just different sounds on it. So with this new record, I kind of wanted to restore the balance between the acoustic sound of the instrument and the electric sound of the instrument. And also I wanted to balance out the original songs and the recognizable, covers. So there are 6 originals, 6 covers, and just a couple of bonus tracks from our current tour. And it features just some wonderful musicians. I mean, I was so honored to record with, brilliant players. There's, of course, Jerry Douglas plays 3 tracks on it. He's one of my all-time favorites. Got the basic, the same rhythm section as a previous record. Evan Hutchings on drums, Nolan Werner on bass. They're both out of Nashville. We added a wonderful guitar player named Dave Preston out of Denver, Colorado. And there's this brilliant classical mallet player out of California named Alan Spencer. And then we got strings and horns and keys and all kinds of fun stuff. So we just really just felt so free to, just take advantage of the studio environment and the tracks and all the gear that was in that studio.
Yeah, you went for the gusto with that.
Yeah,
this one.
this one. So.
What about the title, The Greatest Day? What's that from?
It's after one of the tracks it's the second track on the record, and it's an original piece. I actually wrote it at my manager's house, because my manager lives in Nashville, which is where we recorded the album. And so I got in the night before we were going to go into the studio, and I slept at his house. And I flew in from Honolulu, from Hawaii. So when I got to his house, I don't know, I couldn't really fall asleep yet, so I was playing my ukulele. I was sitting downstairs. He has this really great music room where I sleep when I stay in Nashville. And so I was just playing my ukulele, and then I wrote that song. Yeah, I wrote the song, so I came up with this melody. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then I can't remember if it was that night or the next morning. I think it was the next morning. I went upstairs, and my manager Van was getting breakfast, and I said, hey Van, I just wrote this last night, what do you think? And I played it for him, and he said, oh, I like it, are you going to record it? I was like, I don't know, I just wrote it, so we'll see. And then we went into the studio, we recorded it, and it just kind of set the vibe, I think, for the record, because we were just having so much fun with it. It's kind of a straight ahead, just very simple melody. So I think it was a nice way to ease into the recording session. It just felt good. And the song is called The Greatest Day because it's really about just being positive. And, through every day, there's obstacles and things that feel like they set us back, but if we keep moving forward. So that's what the song is about. So if you really listen to it, the idea is there's 2 contrary lines. So there's one, the second string, there's a line that keeps descending, it keeps moving down, but then the top melody just keeps rising up. So if you listen to it, if you listen real carefully, you can hear that contrary motion in the melody. And then at the end, it goes all the way up to it makes its way all the way up to the high D note, which is which is pretty much the highest note I have on the ukulele. So it's kind of like, yes, getting to the top of that pinnacle. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's great. I didn't realize that when I listened to it. But
Oh,
now
yeah,
I will
yeah.
listen again.
No, I don't think most people, if I don't, it's really
I
silly.
think overall there's like a really positive energy to this album. I guess you could sound kind of sad on the ukulele too, but I feel like it's got this really like brilliance to it.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. Well, I think what I was most proud about with this record is after we finished mixing the album, I got a copy of the final mix, and this is still before we got it mastered and all that, but I took it back home to my family, and I gave one copy to my dad, I gave one copy to my mom, and I guess when they listened to it, they both told me that this is their favorite record of mine. So I was like, yes! I'm a grown man, but still trying to please my parents. I still want my parents' approval, so I think that's what I was most proud of.
Who doesn't want that, though? It's like, yeah. You want to feel that way yourself, too, right? Like, it's the best.
Yeah, always, yeah.
So you added, you mentioned you added Dave Preston to this recording, this group, and can you talk a little bit about why you decided to add another instrument into the mix here?
Well, up until about 4 years ago, I had primarily been touring as a soloist, so that's kind of how I started out. Well, when I was a senior in high school, I had my first band. It was a trio, and we had a percussionist and guitar player who sang, and I was more of a sideman, and we were called Pure Heart. That was my first band. Hey, oh, all right. Hey, thank you. All right. So that was my first band, and a friend of mine had just started up a record label. So he was like, hey, you guys want to record on my record label, right? So I was like, sure. So we recorded 3 albums with him, and it was just, just locally in Hawaii. And then we disbanded, and I started up another band called Cologne, and then again, I was just a sideman, and we released an album, and then after that. And so this was back in our first Pure Heart record came out in 1997, and then the Cologne record came out in 99, and then in 2000, we had disbanded, and I didn't really think I was going to become a solo artist, because I don't sing, and back then, all the successful ukulele players that I knew that had careers, with the exception of someone named Ota-san, who was someone I grew up listening to from Hawaii, everyone sang. So they would play the ukulele and they would sing. And I have a horrible singing voice. So I was like, oh, there's no hope for me. So I just thought, okay, well, this is probably the end for me. And I was thinking of other things to do. But then in 2001, the following year, I got offered a recording contract from a Japanese record label. And it was Sony Music, Japan. So they offered me this deal, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is a dream come true. And it was the first time they ever signed an ukulele player. So I said, I got to do this. So I started there and released a few albums with them, and I was practically almost like living in Japan, because I was there more than half the year, and releasing albums, doing shows, and just playing, and just learning so much, eating good food, sushi, and all that. And then in 2005, I got invited to New York here to perform at it was a Hawaii / kind of Japanese American music and arts festival thing. So they brought me over to do a concert, and I played at BB King's. And not as cool as the Cutting Room. But so that was my first show in New York. And while I was here, there was a group called Ukulele Disco, and they had a little TV show where they would just interview ukulele players. So they contacted me. They're like, "You're in New York. Can we interview you?" Because I guess they were familiar with my previous stuff. So I said, sure. So they took me to Central Park. It was the first time I had ever been to Central Park, right? I grew up in Hawaii. You tell someone, oh, let's meet at this park, and it's like, no problem, right? You can see that. I didn't realize how huge Central Park was. So anyways, we got to Central Park. We found this little rock, and I sat on the rock. They asked me a few questions, and I played an arrangement of George Harrison's While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So that was in 2005. Someone took a snippet of that interview, put it on YouTube, which had just started in 2005 as well, and that went viral. And that's the reason I'm here today. So.
It's like the perfect storm.
Wait, but I didn't answer your question.
No,
I'm sorry.
you
So
didn't.
anyways.
That's okay. It was a good story.
So I was a solo artist for a long time. And then up until about 4 years ago, I met Nolan Werner, the bass player, in Nashville. And then we recorded this Nashville Sessions record together. And then we started touring together. And I just loved it. I loved having the bass, as it's like an extension to the ukulele, or the ukulele is an extension to the bass, because of the different registers, right, of the range, where the bass, the lowest note and all the way up into the highest note. Then I feel like the ukulele kind of takes over from there, from its lowest note, and extends up. So it really completes the instrument. And so we toured together for about 4 years, and then about a year ago, Nolan and I got invited to a recording session in Denver, and there was a guitar player that was hired for that session as well, and that was Dave. And the whole idea was, it was a film score, but the producer just wanted completely improvised music as we watched the film. So it was crazy. There were no charts, nothing. We got in there. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, because we had just finished our show. So we went to the studio, and then Dave came out to the studio, and we just had to sit and play. And we just started playing, and it was like we had been playing together forever. So we thought, man, we got to get this guy's number. So we exchanged numbers and invited him out to record this album. And then we've been on tour together ever since. And now it's been a trio. And it's been wonderful. It's been such an incredible experience for me, because Dave is not just a regular electric guitar player. He does this thing called ambient electric guitar, where he's able to create almost like string pads, and sometimes he sounds almost like an orchestra, So I don't know how he does what he does, but he creates all these great sounds and textures. So you got the bass now, which covers all the foundation, and the ukulele, which kind of sits on top, and then you have this amazing ambient guitar pad that just kind of surrounds, everything, and swims around everything. So it's a very complete sound, and I've just been so thrilled with the new tour and all that.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably really helpful for you to translate this album live, because you did have a lot of extra, like, orchestration.
Yeah, I feel like the feeling and the emotion that comes through is very similar, yeah.
Well, I want to, as you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, if you had a good voice, a singing voice, you might never have really pushed the ukulele to the limits that you have.
Yeah, that's true, because the reason I started, the way I got into playing the way I play, is because when I would, early on, when I would learn songs, a lot of times you're just learning the chords, and you strum the chords. But if you're not singing the melody, or if no one's playing the melody, you can't identify the song. So I would tell my my parents, like, hey, I learned a new song. What song is this? And I would just strum it, and they'd be like, I don't know. They're trying to be nice, and then when I tell them, they're like, oh yeah, that's what it. But so then I had to really learn how to play melody, and there was a school in Hawaii called the Roy Sakuma Ukulele School. And so I went there when I was about 6 years old. My mom was my first teacher. Then when I learned the basic chords, she sent me there. And they learned how to do basic single note picking. But what I realized was I had to learn how to not just play the melody, but I needed to be able to play the chords, but then also keep some kind of groove going, right? So to be able to strum, keep some kind of harmony, keep some kind of a beat and a groove going, but then play the melody on top. And that's really what led to, I guess, the style that I play in now. Yeah, because I couldn't sing, so it was a blessing.
So
yeah.
Thank you. Thank goodness you can't sing. Thank goodness. So let's talk a little bit about the songs on the album. And you have selected some covers, which you are sort of famous for doing these amazing covers.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No,
so can you share a little bit about why you chose some of those songs, and was it hard to decide what to do and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard because there's so many songs out there that I love, and I would love to cover, and I would just do tons of albums of covers, if I could, it'd be. But I think I try to choose songs that would appeal to different people. Like "Time of the Season" by the Zombies. I knew my dad would be like, "Yeah," when he heard that one. But then I also wanted something that was that kind of spoke to the younger generation, and I thought like Ed Sheeran, like I think the world of him, man. He's amazing. You talk about solo performers, and he is just at the pinnacle of that. To get up there with his guitar and no band, and be able to rock a stadium. I mean, that's really something, right? So yeah, I just think the world of him, and so we covered "Shape of You" on this one. We tried to kind of do like a little island reggae kind of take on it. And then there was, what else? I'm a huge Beatles fan, so Eleanor Rigby has always been one of my favorites because I think it was really the first rock tune that incorporated a string section, and it was such a brilliant sound. Nobody was doing that back then. What else did we do? There was a song from the 80s, Bizarre Love Triangle by New Order. So I'm showing my age. That was such a great tune. And the thing about that song is, I mean, it's a great like dance tune and all that. But if you really just hone in on the melody, man, it is truly one of the most gorgeous melodies. I love the melody of that song. And then what else did we do? We did Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which I really love the way this track turned out because it was very. We recorded that last year, right? So it was well over a year ago we recorded that track, and it was not too long after Leonard Cohen had passed. So when we went into the studio, we were still kind of thinking about that. So I think that one had a very special vibe to it.
I love your version of "Time of the Season" because I think it's so unexpected to sort of hear a ukulele in that sort of format of how you play it on there.
Oh, and if you listen,
you're like rocking out.
If you listen carefully to the beginning of "Time of the Season," all the that's me. Yeah, I don't think I got the vocal credit for it, but that's me on there. And yeah, so that's. And then I also covered my first Jimi Hendrix tune. So we did F6 Was 9, and in the arrangement. Because when I was talking with my manager Van about, we're like, what Hendrix tune should we do? So If 6 Was 9 was always my favorite, and another one that I love is of course Little Wing. So I kind of married the two. So if you listen to the arrangement, I didn't want to do Little Wing because I wanted to focus on If 6 Was 9. But what I did was, for all the true Jimi Hendrix fans, right? When you listen to Little Wing, at the end of the song, when Jimmy starts soloing, he comes up with, he plays this iconic riff, right? That bam, 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 down, 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 right? And it's like, and then it starts fading out. Like he just started his guitar solo, and then they start fading it out. So if you're like me, as it's fading out, you're turning up your volume because you want to hear every last note that he plays. And it's such a cool riff that every guitar player or every band that covers that song, whenever they take a solo on Little Wing, they always start with that riff. So I thought, you know what, let's make something of it. So I actually took that riff and kind of placed it into the If 6 Was 9 arrangement. So it's good. There's a lot of metronomic modulations in it, and just some fun stuff. So
I love how thoughtful you are, and like they're cover songs, but you bring your own thing to them. Like they're not just like, I'm going to play this song. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
I really
well,
like
that's
that.
the fun part, It's like leaving little Easter eggs, kind of, how they do that in movies. But yeah, so I like doing little things like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And let's talk a little bit about some of your originals on the album. And You mentioned the title track and how that was inspired. Can you share a little bit more about how you started off maybe with a couple of the other original songs on there?
One of the other originals is a song called Pangram, and that song was based on the chromatic scale. So basically, all 12 notes in the Western music vocabulary. So all 12 tones. So going from A to A sharp to B to C sharp to D, D sharp E, F sharp G to G sharp, and so forth. So I thought it would be kind of cool to write a song, that uses all the different notes, right? Because the ukulele, you only have 2 octaves to work with, and it's rare that you actually play a song that utilizes all 12 tones, because you're usually in a key center that eliminates, 4 or 5 of the tones. So wanted to do something like that, and I called it Pangram because I remember in elementary school we learned about pangrams, and a pangram is a short sentence that uses all of the letters in the alphabet. So like the quick brown fox jumps over a lazy dog, right? That uses all the letters from A to Z, and every letter is used. Some are used twice, of course, right? Like the letter A. But so that was the idea. So I thought writing a song that uses all the, basically the entire music alphabet, right? And calling it Pangram. So that was one. And then I talked about Greatest Day. Another interesting song on there is a tune called Straight A's. And Straight A's is, it's really an ukulele tune because your first note, the first string on the ukulele, the one that's closest to the ground, is an A. When you play it, that string open by itself. So I always thought, man, it would be cool to write a song where anyone could jam along just by playing that one string. Because you don't have to play any chords, you don't have to do anything with your left hand. All you gotta do is play that one string, the A note. And then it reminded me of a Joe Beam song called One Note Samba. Yeah. I don't know if you guys know that one, right? So it's basically, it's not the entire song, but for sections of the song, the melody note is just one note being played over and over as the chords change. And as the chord progression changes, it changes the actual voicing of the melody, which is a really cool sound. So I thought, man, it would be cool to write something like that. So that's the idea with straight A's. If you were to, from beginning to end, if you just played straight quarter notes on your ukulele or any instrument and just played A, from beginning to end, and this song goes through about three different key changes. But the A always functions as a different tone in that chord. So like in the beginning, it starts basically in A minor, so then A is just functioning as the root, right? But then later on, it goes through these other changes where like it goes to an E flat, so now the A becomes a sharp 11. It goes to a D minor, so now the A becomes a perfect fifth, right? So it goes through all these different changes, and then that A note, kind of much like Pangram, how you're using all 12 tones, the A note becomes all of the different intervals in the scale. So I just thought that was kind of a cool approach because I had never written anything like that before. So that's what straight A's is.
Now I definitely have to listen to the album again, right?
So just try. You can just play A all the way through the entire song.
I'm going to get an instrument out and play along with that. That's really great. So I read this story, but I thought maybe you could share it with all our viewers and our audience too about the Beatles and how you started listening to the Beatles. And
the Charlie Bird one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this is a funny story.
Because you cover a lot of Beatles stuff, right?
Yeah.
Several songs.
So when I was a kid, my parents always had music playing in the house, and we lived in this little apartment. And so whenever I come home from school, there was always music playing. And one of my favorite records was an instrumental guitar record by Charlie Bird. And Charlie Bird was this incredible guitar player, played all instrumental music, did a lot of bossa nova stuff. He played everything on the nylon string guitar. So probably because I played ukulele, I gravitated toward that sound. And I would listen to it over and he did a whole album of covers, like popular cover tunes. So there was like Yesterday on there, Here, There, and Everywhere, Let It Be, all these great tunes. So when I was a kid, I had no idea who the Beatles were. I just thought Charlie Bird is one of the greatest composers of all time. So it wasn't until later I discovered that he was covering these songs by the Beatles, and then I didn't even realize these songs had lyrics. So it just blew my mind. But then that's when I got really into the Beatles.
I want to know how you didn't know about the Beatles.
Yeah, I don't know. I just but my parents, they would listen to all kinds of music. So I remember they had this one album, the Woodstock record that they'd play. They had Led Zeppelin, but then they'd also have like Vicky Carr and Edie Gourmet. So I was in elementary school listening to Vicky Carr singing With Pen in Hand, and she's like crying on the recording as she's singing, and I was like, wow, I've never heard someone actually cry as they're singing. So I remember that just being such an emotional moment for me. I was like, wow, this is cool. There's just so much emotion in the song. And then what else did they listen to? Olivia Newton-John was one of my mom's favorites. She had that album Physical, and that was her house cleaning record. So anytime she was cleaning the house, she had Olivia Newton-John's record playing. And I joke around, I tell people, so every time I hear the song Physical, I want to clean, I want to vacuum the floor or do something,
That is a really good cleaning album,
it is.
I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and song. So I read that you tracked everything live on this album. So can you talk about why that was important?
Yeah, this was, again, going back to the Nashville Sessions record. That album, we went into the studio, and it was basically, we didn't go in with any charts, with any ideas. We wanted to just go into the studio and just write and compose and try to come up with ideas. So there was a lot of improvisation on that record. So because we were doing that, so we just basically would start playing, and then we would just record. We would come up with a little bit of an idea, like maybe an A section and a B section. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to play this melody here, and then we'll go to this melody, and then after that, we'll just kind of open it up and jam and see what happens. And then we'll usually give a nod, and then we'll go back to the beginning or something like that, right? So with that record, when I listened back to it, there was this freshness and innocence to the recording, because everything that was played was basically unprepared. We were discovering as we played, and we were kind of like, as we're playing, because there's something magical that happens when you play something for the first time and you actually like it. You play something, you're like, oh, that was cool. And then you try to go back and recreate it, and it just doesn't have that same magic. And that's why I love jazz improvisation. When I listen to a good jazz trio or a good jazz band, and they're wailing on their solos, and there are these moments that happen where you can tell everyone's playing, and then they hit these moments, and like, oh man, that was so cool, right? And they all kind of look at each other like, oh yeah, man, we're cooking, it's happening, right? But then the thing is, the next night, if they play again, they never try to recreate that, because they know it'll never have that same magic. So that's why they'll create something completely different. So that's what I felt we had with the Nashville Sessions record. There were just some really cool moments, and not so cool moments, but it's those not so cool moments that help get you to the cool moments, right? So I wanted to really keep that live feel and that innocence with this record too. But I also wanted to have the balance of some, just having some preparedness and having ideas before going into the studio, so we're a little bit more organized. And so the idea was to record the rhythm section, and so I would record with the rhythm section, and we would play it kind of like how we did Nashville Sessions. So we would just go in and jam and just go for it like it's a live performance, and just kind of have that energy and that excitement. And then after we record it, we'd record it like 2 or 3 times, and then we would just pick one of the takes that we liked. So maybe it was the first one, or maybe it was the third one, or the second. Oh, the second one had a cool moment there. So we would just take that second recording, the second track, and then we would save it, and then we would go back, and then we'd be like, oh man, you know what? Let's add this percussion part. So the drummer would lay down a percussion part to match that, and then the producer R.S. Field, who is co-producing with me, he might be like, "Oh man, I hear like an organ part in there. You know, we're gonna bring in this organ player," and then would bring in the organ and play. So it still had the element of the live, you know, punch and everything from the rhythm section, but then we could just add little seasoning and spices around that, and I think it turned out. I mean, to me, like personally, I think the sounds and the arrangements have never been stronger for me on any of my recordings before, you know, since this one. So it's something I felt really good about, and you're constantly experimenting, and I think with the ukulele, it's such a new instrument. And so there's no, like if you're recording mandolin or violin or guitar or bass, the engineer knows, oh, we use this mic, we use this, and we run it through these preamps and we get that sound. But with the ukulele, you know, we're still experimenting and trying different things. Like, how do we capture the instrument in a way that feels natural and captures the warmth and the presence and makes you hear it and be like, oh yeah, that's an ukulele. You know, with every album, we're just experimenting with different things, trying new things, and I think with this record, I think we got a step closer. So, yeah.
So because we're streaming on Guitar World, I'm sure the people out there watching want to know all about your pedals and your gear.
Oh yeah.
Because you use an interesting setup for ukulele and.
Yeah,
can
and
you
this
just share
is
a little
a
bit?
basic setup for me now.
I mean, you don't have to go through every pedal, but can you share a little bit about some of your go-to gear here?
So the most basic.
They can't see it on camera. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the most basic pedal that I'll use is a reverb pedal, and you know, finding the right reverb pedal is a real challenge. Reverb it's a pedal that mimics the sound of sound waves bouncing off walls. So like, you know, when you sing in the shower and it just sounds good because there's like it's not an echo, but it's kind of like an echo, right? That's the reverb sound. And you want me to grab my ukulele and demonstrate some of these sounds? Sure. Okay, yeah.
This is dangerous because once we get started, who knows where this could go. Do you want to talk at the same time? No.
All right, so I'm going to start with just the basic sound of the instrument. Sounds like, right? Sounds like an ukulele. And then, so here. So the reverb pedal, like I said, adds that ambience, makes it sound like we're in a cave or in a nice hall. So this is without it. Yeah. So that's the reverb pedal, and it's kind of subtle, but I think it really adds a lot of depth, and especially when you're plugged directly into a sound system, it kind of takes away that in your face kind of sound, right? So it softens it up a little bit. The next pedal that I have here that I'm going to engage is my delay pedal, or an echo. Sounds like this. What it does is whatever note I play, it'll take that sound and it'll recreate it like this. And I can get really extreme with it if I want. Just like that. So
What's the name of that delay pedal?
Yeah, this one is just an analog delay, and it's made by a company called Jam Pedals.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really great. They're made out over in Greece. So, okay, and then the next one, this one here, I have my looper, And so what that does is it records whatever I play, and then it'll record it in real time, and it'll just loop it over and over. So I could do things like this.
That's a really long loop that you just did.
And then what I can do over this is I can play a melody like. That's that pedal. Thank you.
That's like your best friend.
I love it. And then this next one is called a freeze pedal. And what it does is it allows me to play a note, and it'll take that note and just freeze it and suspend it in time and just hold on to it like a pad, like this. Oh, sorry, wait, I have to engage it. Here we go. See, and it'll just hold that note for me. As long as I hold this pedal down, it'll hold it. And then much like the looper, I can play over this. So that's that one. Thank you. And then this is another one of my favorites. It's called the Pog. And actually, Jerry Douglas turned me onto this pedal. I love this one. So what it does is whatever note I play, it'll take that note and it'll recreate it an octave lower. So it sounds like this. So this is without it. And this is with it on. And last but not least, this is my overdrive sound or my distortion sound when I'm mimicking the guitar stuff. So check this out. And then when you use all the different pedals together, you can do stuff like this.